Okay, welcome back to the Moporium, and we have a repeat customer, the Suzuki RM80. It's going for those jobs I advised on last time, which is the front brake disc, rear brake disc, chain and sprockets, and the kill switch. It's also got a broken perch on the clutch lever. It's cracked along there, so it can't be tightened up. So it's also leaking coolant from the joint between the cylinder head and the cylinder itself. So I suspect the O-rings have gone. Nut there, looks like there's a bit of a gap in it compared to that one. So I don't want to just pinch it up. I'm going to inspect it and find out what's wrong with it. So let's make a start, shall we? Okay, so I'm doing the front brake disc first, and the first thing I've actually spotted is this castellated nut hasn't got a split pin to stop it from coming undone. There should be one there in that hole, and it's missing. So you have one of those and it goes back on again. Let's try this impact driver out from Parkside. See how well it works. Perfect. There's a washer there. There's a spacer in there. It out. Brake pads will stay put. Fantastic. That one. So there's 3 machine screws holding it in. One thing I've noticed on this is that someone's already welded the sort of mounting points at some point. They've snapped for that disc, so I'll put some spray on there just to make sure it doesn't come off by snapping. Okay, so I skipped ahead a little bit. Got the new disc on after I cleaned it with some brake cleaner. The 3 M6 machine screws have been cleaned up, the threads have been cleaned up, and also the threads actually in the hub itself have been cleaned with the M6 tap. I've also replaced the wheel bearings because there's quite a bit of rocking them. Even though they felt smooth when you spun the wheel on the axle, there's a lot of kind of side to side kind of play in the wheel when I checked it. So let's mount it back in the forks. Okay, front wheel is back on. I did remove the brake caliper from the bracket on the front fork just to make it easier to get on. And it's a good job I did as well, because somebody actually fitted the actual anti-rattle clip on the brake pads the wrong way around. So that's been corrected. I've got the split pin in there, like it should be, and there is no rock or kind of undue play in the wheel bearings now that they've been replaced. So fixed. Okay, doing the chain and the sprockets. This cover's got to come off. So there's 3 8mm bolts holding it on. There's a circlip on the front sprocket. There's a master link there. So it just comes off in the usual manner. Make sure it's always facing that way when you put it back on again. There shouldn't be anywhere there on the sprocket, so something is rubbing that as it goes around. So I suspect it's one of these. It's too long. Something is rubbing that, so it shouldn't be like that. It has got a split pin in the back, castellated nut. Although what it's doing, I don't know, because it's actually nowhere near the castellations on the nut itself. So we'll find out. So just take everything apart, drop that back wheel out. So the back wheel is off and the chain is off, and I figured out why the split pin and the castellated nut was nowhere near the actual nut itself, and also why the disc was being rubbed. It's because it was missing a spacer on the actual axle on this side. When I undid the nut here and the chain adjusters, the rear swing arm just went bonk and spread apart. So somebody basically over tightened it to take up that kind of gap. It's quite considerable gaps, at least 10mm, so I have to machine a spacer up for that. So I've changed the sprocket, and the new one's a steel one, the old one's aluminium. Very easy to change. You've got 13mm nuts on that side, it's all Allen headed bolts this side, and the holes aren't threaded at all, so that they just, once you're in the nuts, they just pop out. So that was easy. The next job is going to be hard, because the disc has worn down that much. It's actually, the pad's worn the top of the actual machine screws off. So that's going to be fun, isn't it? Okay, so I managed to remove them. I bet you figured out what I did, didn't you? That's right. Cut a slot across there, across the top of the actual screws, and then use the old impact driver to get them out. Simple, eh? Right, let's get that disc off. Okay, so it's the next day. I was working on the Suzuki RM80 until about 8 PM last night. It was going to be chilly outside, so I kind of packed up and called it a day then. I did get the rear wheel back on, and I've also done the clutch lever and the kill switch. So let's look at the rear wheel. So I had to put two M15 washers down there to act as shims, due to the actual kind of the issue with the part being missing. There's a bush actually between the washers and the bearing, which is important, because what you don't want to do is, say that's your bearing, put a washer on it and bridge that part and that part, because this part rotates, this part doesn't, and essentially what happens is when you put the washer over the top of them, you kind of mechanically couple them together, and so the bearing becomes pointless. The chain tensioning caused a bit of an issue, because on this side the tensioner had actually snapped, and I thought something was a bit weird, because when I took the chain off, the adjusters were right the way back here, and it was still really slack. I think what happened is the adjuster on that side has snapped, so they put a longer chain on there and put it as far back as possible to try and get the right amount of tension on it. So when I put the new chain on, there was no way of adjusting it, because it actually has to be that farther forward. So I had to put a new M6 bolt in there that was longer to give me enough thread to adjust it. And general rule of thumb on dirt bikes is, well, you got the slider there, you get 3 fingers in there, that should set your tension just about right. It doesn't rub on the frame there, and it hits the actual under there, so that's fine. It all depends whose fingers they are though, because you've got, like, young hands, they're going to be very thin fingers, and if you're old like me, they're going to be quite fat chipolata fingers. So that's the new clutch lever, pretty self-explanatory. Just undid the old one, reattached the new one, put the cable on, adjusted it. Brilliant. Same for the kill switch. I did test this before I put it on, because of Chinesium. It's a 2-wire kill switch, and it's a 2-wire feed up from the ignition system, so it matches and it works. Right, next job, cylinder head gasket. Now I'm pretty sure there's going to be no fluid down to this point here, but I'm still going to drain it off just in case, because I don't want to get any kind of coolant into the crankcase on this thing. Okay, so I've removed the radiator side cover, bolt there, bolt there. I've also undone the bottom mounting point there on this isolastic bush, as well as the top one on, there's actually one up behind there, just to pivot the radiator out of the way. Just remember to put something on there while you undo it, not just buzz it off with an impact gun, because you'll probably shear it off. And that gives enough room then to get the cylinder head off. Okay, so to remove the cylinder head, I had to undo the 4 dome-headed nuts to the 12mm spanner and the coolant pipe. Also up there, on that bracket there, is a little bolt, M6, holding the exhaust to the frame. If you just slacken that off, you can push the exhaust out of the way, just enough to get the head off. Okay, as you can see, there's some damage to the inside of the cylinder head. This is the combustion chamber. This area here is known as the squish band. Now, these little pock marks aren't from kind of foreign objects getting in there. If they were, I expect them to just be in like one place and be a lot deeper. I'm pretty sure this is in pre-ignition. This is where the temperature inside the cylinder head gets so hot, the fuel ignites before the spark ignites it at the wrong point, and you get loads of little explosions, and it causes this kind of damage. I know for a fact this bike was running lean for quite some time, and that would cause the engine to run hotter than normal and provide the conditions for pre-ignition to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the whole cylinder head kind of a rub on this piece of plate glass, which is covered in grinding paste, and that will make sure it's like kind of true and flat. And I'm going to try and get in there with some kind of very fine wet and dry paper to clean this area up here. Okay, so I've cleaned up the cylinder head. I actually managed to get it in the lathe because it's actually a symmetrical head from that point of view, with the center spark plug hole. And my secret to this is an M14 wheel bolt off a BMW Mini, same size thread as the spark plug. And you can then kind of like get it between the centers on the lathe, and just a bit of wet and dry paper soaked in 3-in-1 oil and clean that up. I didn't go too mad. I didn't really want to kind of take too much of this off because it's water cooled. Don't know how far you can go with a cutting tool. And also, if you were to kind of just skim that with a cutting tool, you would alter the characteristics of the squish band, and I don't want to change the performance of the bike. So anyway, I just got to clean up the top of the cylinder barrel, fit the new O-rings, fit the head. Okay, everything is reassembled. I had a slight problem with the inner O-ring, and it was slightly too small. And yeah, they're not supposed to stretch, and they're not supposed to kind of shrink, and they're supposed to be a specific size. The other one was fine though, but I did manage to get it to fit. Just gonna wait to see if there's any leaks. There is coolant in the radiator. So we're gonna have a cup of tea, come back, see if it's still okay. Okay, so I've left about 3 hours, and apart from a little bit of a drip off the side of there, I haven't had any leaks, and I think that might be from when I moved this pipe. This was tucked up there when I was doing the work on it, and I put it on last after the cylinder head nuts were tightened up. So I think it might have a bit of fluid just dripped off over the top of that one before I put it on the actual spigot inside there. So I've cleaned it off, and we'll see how it goes. I'm a little bit suspicious that the studs might actually be kind of hitting the inside of these dome-headed nuts before they're actually fully tightened, to give the impression that the cylinder head is tight when it's not actually. If these washers are quite well compressed, it might not be sealing as well as it should do. But anyway, that's it for now. All the jobs are done. It's just time to hand it back to the owner. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. It's much appreciated. And see you all again soon. Take care.